Mankind's been trying to destroy itself since the beginning of time. Finally, we have enough firepower to finish the job. Welcome to Voice of the Fat Mantis. I am your host, the Fat Mantis, and we need to discuss episode 3 of The Watchmen. She was killed by space junk. Thinking that has a metaphoric title. Hint, it might have something to do with a blue dildo. The episode was stylistic and beautiful, particularly performances from Jeremy Irons, who very often, he's not doing anything in any particular episode, but he seems to steal the episode each time with his shenanigans, both with the clones, but also just the way he is as being the weird lord, the esoteric and eccentric lord with all sorts of crazy ideas and trying to create things. However, the entirety of the episode hinged on one thing, and that is Laurie Blake and all that she had to offer us in terms of updates of her character and her life. The one problem that I had with this is that everything Laurie Blake was, pretty much everything, was a walk back of the character out of the graphic novel. Now, although she didn't like being a superhero and was forced into it by her mother in the original graphic novel, the problem is they went too far the opposite direction. Now she absolutely hates masks and is literally shooting them in the streets, as we have seen. She's utterly brutal in hunting them down, has no remorse for people who have the same occupation that not only she had, but her old friends used to have, but they walk back so many aspects of her character. For instance, clearly they make it that she is in extreme lust or extreme love with Dr. Manhattan, which totally violates her entire character arc from the original graphic novel. She was confused in that stage of her life, and the whole point of her story was that she grew out of this and was able to get past. She didn't need a man to define her, even though she ended up with the nerd Nite-Owl. And this ultimately did not work for me. Primarily, I'm gonna have to say that it lost points with the new Laurie aspect, however it gained points for having a giant blue dildo in it. Ultimately, I give this episode an 80. Now, don't get me wrong, I am still highly invested, still enjoyed this episode, still cannot wait for the next episode, can't wait to see what more things they have for us. It was interesting to see her and another Watchman enter the story. However, it was a little disappointing what they chose to go with her. Now, just because that isn't the direction I would go, it doesn't mean that that wasn't an entertaining or good direction at all. Now, I think we've got to move on to conspiracy theories and, of course, our timeline. Adrian Veidt, it has been clear, I think we've all suggested it over time, that he is in a prison. And that the clones that serve him aren't actually serving him, they're serving him in a certain way, but they're really part of his captors. They were created by his captors, and I'm starting to believe it's Dr. Manhattan. I don't know if you've noticed it with the candles, but each episode there's another candle added onto his anniversary. They don't say birthday, they say anniversary. He has been in prison for this amount of time, and that each scene is 1 year, meaning that the Adrian Veidt scenes are in the past. There is an added website that goes along with the show, and it is similar to the added content that's between the chapters in the graphic novel. It serves as that, and they call it PDpedia. Just as the original Watchmen series took advantage of the media of writing and all the different types of publications there could be for us to learn more things about the world of the Watchmen, they're taking advantage of it and using modern social media and wikis to explain what's going on. And one of the most interesting informations we get is that Nite-Owl and Silk Spectre, at the time being called the Comedian, were actually caught and arrested for violating the Heat Act in 1995. That is when Nite-Owl refused to flip. Silk Spectre loved to flip, betray her man, betrayed everything she believes in, and decided to sell out superhero kind. I'm pretty sure that's where they confiscated Nite-Owl's gear and actually mass-produced it for law enforcement purposes, which explains how they have the Nite-Owl ships, his binoculars, and I'm sure all sorts of other gadgets that he may be doing. Who knows? They might even have the thermo, the Arctic costume that he has. I am going to further theory craft. 1995, Adrian Veidt, who was up to no good. I believe he was starting the transdimensional attack theory, or, in his own justification, to better mankind. And in the course of that, it not only made Dr. Manhattan come back from the deep galaxy wherever he was, but it also made Nite-Owl and Silk Spectre come out of retirement to take him down. Now, in the course of this is where they get arrested. And that is probably afterwards, maybe not immediately after, maybe a couple years later, but that is when Dr. Manhattan goes back to Mars, where he imprisons Veidt in what I believe is an atmospheric bubble. A much larger version of what he made for Laurie when he wanted to speak to her on Mars. He made a pocket of air, but he also created an environment. He created a race of clones, and he created a castle to keep our Veidt. Remember, Dr. Manhattan always, as the graphic novel would point out, has an immense respect and immense love for this man. And actually, even though he seems like he doesn't care, he does. And he decided to make Veidt's life comfortable. However, being not as smart as Veidt, as Dr. Manhattan clearly has always had, he didn't realize that Veidt wants other things. Being the world's smartest man, he needs more things to preoccupy his time than hunting buffalo and riding horses. He wants more, and one of the things he's going to do is find a way off of Mars. We are watching steps heading into a direction where he is going to find his way off of Mars. By any means necessary, he is the world's smartest man, and will be interesting to watch his daring escape. Word from people who have claimed to have seen future episodes, people who work behind the scenes, saying is that episode 6 is supposed to be out of its mind. It will blow us away totally. And a lot of people, people on the internet are speculating that this might be his escape. However, I don't think his escape will be the greatest episode ever seen. I don't think it's going to be mind-boggling. What I do think is that that's going to be a trans-dimensional attack. You heard it here first, kids. Episode 6 was going to be a trans-dimensional attack, or should I say a phony one, probably involving a giant squid, probably involving teleportation and all sorts of devastation. Remember, the governments of the world need the people to believe that interdimensionality is constantly breaking in because of Dr. Manhattan. Another thing we got to talk about is this joke. So the joke is actually creating all sorts of havoc on the internet, as in everyone is interpreting it differently, and I am not going to claim to be the person who has those answers. I have my own interpretation of what her overly long joke, and I'm not going to recite it again. Because, quite frankly, that was long, and honestly, you could tell that it was a joke, that she was telling someone who loves her and who she loves. Because honestly, if you don't love someone, you are not going to listen to a joke that long. That was just hella long. Oh man, that was a long joke. I was falling asleep during this part. So So we've got to get into this, the analysis of the joke. So ultimately, I believe that she is implying in her joke that she is the only person, being the little girl in it, the bricklayer's daughter, that she is the only one who can distract God. And why is she the only one who can distract God long enough to kill him? Because the God in question, even though there was a blue God who was sent to hell in her joke, that, anytime you're referring to God in any of the Watchmen fiction, it always goes back to Dr. Manhattan. So basically what she's saying is she's the one person who can kill God because God still loves her. That is my analysis of the end of that joke. So, but what do you guys think? This is very interesting. What do you guys think the joke means? What does it ultimately mean? And what was it, just overwriting as, Alan Moore and people trying to write like Alan Moore tend to do? Is this just nonsense as filler? They thought it was a good way to do it. I also have another question that lurks, is was the car that was dropped right in front of her the exact same car? Because there are a car that took Will was in, Angela's old car, because there are actually a lot of people who don't believe that it is, and it's a possibility that I don't believe that it is. I don't think that it is written in stone that that is the same one. I think it's very possible that that car actually was a message from Dr. Manhattan. I mean, what do you think of that? Please let me know. An interesting moment in it, or an interesting facet of the Watchmen world are these new Dr. Manhattan blue booths, which are basically serve as prayer booths where people can spend their good hard-earned money to send a broadcast to a god living on Mars that doesn't speak back. And they just feel, I'm assuming that the whole purpose of this is to make people feel uplifted and be like, well, God is listening to me. God is out there. You know, the blue guy is out there, because once again, he is the science god as opposed to the spiritual god. And, you know, Dr. Manhattan has essentially replaced God in all these other senses. So there's probably fools everywhere just calling this guy who's just, you know, who's not interested in them one bit. It's interesting because it relates so much about God and questions our own God, and it clearly has a lot to do with Alan Moore and his own issues with God. He's probably saying this. I have no proof of that, but I'm just saying. So there you have it. There is my review and analysis of episode 3. What did you think of the episode? What did you think of the new take on Laurie Blake? Particularly her treasure trove of goodies inside her armored suitcase. What do you think of the direction of this show? It seems to reinvent each other with each passing episode. So I can't wait to see you guys next week. We will discuss all the magic and hype that happens on Sunday. Until then, I want you to spank that like button, share, subscribe, love one another, and go in peace. Ciao for now, my fellow watchers.